everyone. Welcome to Forget Me Not Radio, the podcast where we discuss taboo topics and other issues that society would rather keep silent. My name is Amy Dommett, and I'm your host. Today, I sat down with Angine Moss from the Hosanna for Youth organization. Miss Moss is an entrepreneur. She is the founder and president of Hosanna for Youth, which is a 501c3 organization dedicated to serving the needs of youth who are considered at risk within our communities. Expose the Conversation, a Hosanna program, focuses on bringing awareness and prevention to incest, molestation, and rape within families. It was born as a result of Angine's own personal experience. Angine believes that if we can help an individual, we can reunite a family and change the dynamics of what we call a community. If you're not familiar with Forget Me Not Radio, you can learn a lot more about us and our guests by visiting amydommett.com/podcast. There you will find upcoming episodes as well as the guests that are on them and information. And you can find out how you can support this project through patreon.com or PayPal. Both links are there. It is through the financial support of people like you that we are able to bring this podcast to life and share these extraordinary stories. Please subscribe to us on iTunes if you haven't already. That way you can get up-to-date information and releases. And if you are a subscriber, we would absolutely love and be forever thankful for your ratings and reviews. That's what helps other people find us. And your feedback is important to us. Thank you for joining us today, and I will see you on the other side. Everybody, I'm here with Angine Moss today with Hosanna for Youth, and this is a nonprofit here in the South Florida area that works with victims of rape, incest, and molestation. But I'm going to let Angine tell you more about all that. So thank you, Angine.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Hosanna for Youth is an organization for those that are considered at risk. We create programs to tap into some of the issues that many are faced with that they have to be silenced about. One of the issues, we came up with a program called Expose the Conversation, which is the platform to get them to talk about what they've been through. So we stood on the platform of incest, molestation, and rape, which was a hard topic for many.
I bet. That's another one of those things people don't talk about.
Yeah. It's a taboo topic in any culture, in any race, any age. It's something that the secret just keeps it happening.
I'm smiling at you stupidly if you're wondering, because you said it's a taboo topic. And I literally just made a comment on our Patreon page that said, I've been playing with the name of this podcast. We've got several recordings under our belt, but I've been playing with the name, and I've stuck to Forget Me Not Radio because that means something to me personally, and I want to hold to that. But I was like, we need something else. And the tagline that I came up with was taboo topics. So it's just so see, I always laugh that people can't see us when we're talking, and I'm sitting here like, oh yeah, you're talking about these awful things, and I'm sitting here smiling at you like an idiot. But yeah, so
many times I go inside churches or organizations or schools, and you hear the people say, you can hear the breath come out of them because it's a subject or a topic at hand that they haven't been granted the privilege to address those things that have happened to them. So when I saw that, it made me realize this is somewhere that needs to be penetrated, in lack of better words, that we need to have the discussion about and let them know it's okay. So one of our things we tell our youth when we're out is it's okay to tell. And then we tell the parents, teach them it's okay to tell. Because a lot of times that's what's used against them.
Yes.
To keep them captured in that situation.
And, you mentioned a few things that just really caught my attention just now. And the first thing you said was that you'll have to bear with me too. I lose my train of thought often. You said they didn't have the privilege of talking. I like that phrase. Tell me why you say it that way.
So for me, I'm a survivor of molestation. I was molested by my cousin at 8 years old. My family was a Bahamian family. So culturally, you did not have certain conversations within the family or about the family due to pride.
We've had this conversation with other cultural, from other cultural standpoints, which it's a huge factor for people, when it comes to these things, when it comes to what's acceptable and what's not, what's talked about and what's not.
So a lot of times now, the conversation that I have with families, and regardless of what the culture is make it okay to have this conversation. It starts out where we're not given the truth that our bodies is our body. You know what I'm saying? So then with that, we're left in this false perception of the unrealisticness of what our body does. So when someone else that's in the family introduce themselves to our body, we think it's supposed to be okay because they're uncle or cousin or granddad or auntie.
And it comes back from a misperception of what's acceptable for you and what is not acceptable.
I was in a meeting and one of the young ladies said to me, she goes, well, in my culture, when, you're greeting one of the persons, you hug and you kiss. And something snapped and I remembered. I had a family friend that used to come to the house to visit my dad. And, when they come, it was always the greetings of a hug. Oh, hi, little Angine. But the arm would reach around my back and the fingers would be on the small of my breast. And he's squeezing.
So it's definitely not your normal hug.
No. But if we condition our children to stay in a child's place, how they used to say when I was young, and don't flip off the mouth, then the predator or the family-friendly predator, I should say, have leeway to do what they want.
Right. Because the child is automatically silenced. And I think, like you said, it's how we perceive these topics. And, I can say I was raised in, the one side of my family, it was Italian and Syrian. So you can just put that together with how touchy-feely everybody is. Everybody's grabbing your cheeks and you get kisses. Kisses on the mouth aren't that, abnormal. Even, you hug everybody, whatever. And the other side was just very friendly and just a lovey-dovey. And I'm that way. I hug everybody, even people I don't know.
Right.
But I tend to warn people, like, oh, I'm a hugger. And if they give me that look, I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not. No, because I know that doesn't make you comfortable.
Right.
That's. Whereas if it's a stranger, I'm not always comfortable. But I look back to the fact that was normal behavior in my family, to hug and kiss and dote and hold hands or cuddle on the couch. But at the same time, I think I had a realization of where it went too far. So somewhere that was discussed or talked about. I don't remember it. But at some point, or, perhaps it was just modeling on my parents' part that these are acceptable. But if you're not coming from a family where that's discussed appropriately, or where it's perhaps modeled inappropriately, that sets a child up for a completely different way of perceiving things.
Exactly. So many of the young people that I was, mentoring or coming in contact with, you see this behavior from them. When you start talking about topics of this, they kind of pull back or they stiffen up, and you watch the body language. And I said, you know what, I have to start sharing my own experience, my own story to help someone else come over. How can I get them in a better place? But then I realized it's not just a child, it's a whole family. At first, we're a nonprofit of 3 years. So at first, the first, year or so, we were looking at the victim per se.
Yeah, you learn as you go.
Yeah. And then we said, wait a minute. But at the moment that this child realized that touch was unfriendly, now it starts a divide between the child and whoever the caretaker is, because it's like, why didn't you know?
Right.
That was my question for years, being a survivor, of molestation. No one ever asked me what was wrong. And I went through all of the spirals from 8 all the way up into my 20s.
Describe spiral. Because I understand the concept from a very... But I have to I'm not really sure what you're referring to. So I think that's important to talk about.
Okay.
That I presume there's a lot of people out there that don't know what that means or what they're looking for. Exactly.
So, 8 years old, here I am. I'm in elementary school, going into middle school, and I'm very promiscuous, inquisitive about sex, doing actions that... in the right for, from an adult standpoint, would say, what is this little girl going through?
Right.
That attention, needed it, yearned it, and went from that to, engaging to depression. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't light enough. I didn't have this or that like the other girls. And I'm thinking sex is what's going to allow me to be the girl.
Right.
So in school, I was making the grades. I was doing everything I was supposed to. But on the back end, I was this just loose young lady no one paid attention to. Very depressed. Went through the suicide attempts, really.
Like
multiple, and became a cutter because it eased the pain of what was happening when I went to that cousin's house. So,
all of that, you're hitting on so many topics that people, again, I said the reason that we're doing this is because there are people out there like yourself. We've talked to several others. We've talked to survivors. I've shared my story, all from different perspectives. But the reality is that the signs are there.
Yeah.
And when these traumas happen to people, whether they be molestation or psychological and verbal abuse in the home or watching your mother get beat up or physically living through, an abusive relationship, it doesn't seem to matter what the trauma is. The fact is that somebody that is supposed to care about you is inflicting some kind of pain on you that you are unable to process.
Exactly.
Again, all the reasons are different for why you're not able to process it, but you're not. And you've just mentioned several signs. Can you break that down a little bit further and maybe talk about why those things happen? Or I know that's kind of a broad question, but you mentioned cutting. That's something people should be fairly familiar with.
Right.
It's a topic, albeit often a very negative or made in a joking way. Oh, that kid's a cutter, or they should be. You hear these comments, but why do kids do that? When you said it relieves the pain.
It relieves the pain in a sense. Okay, so you know what you're going through. You know what you're going through, put it that way. Because at the time, I was my biological mother and my father had divorced.
Okay.
separated at the time. And so my dad lived with his girlfriend and my mom lived in another area. Well, my mom gave me to him and he took me back. But all the while, her thing was I reminded her of him, I thought, all these years. So they would fight and fuss and back and forth and this and that, and just not understanding it as a kid prior to the molestation. So it was an already unhealthy household.
Right there in and of itself is very emotional.
Right. And trying to find its place.
Yeah, exactly.
So by the time you get to, now you're 8 and you're being touched, you're getting attention that you didn't get in your household. So you think that that's okay. Somebody loves you in a sense. But you know it's wrong. You know it don't supposed to happen. You know this person is a relative or so forth. So in the midst of that psychological imbalance that takes place in all of that fuzzy confusion, you think, okay, I'm not worthy. I shouldn't be here. You know, maybe the world would be such a better place if I wasn't. And in your mind at that age, you think, okay, how do you kill yourself? Now you got social media that tells you and shows you. But back then, I'm a 70s kid. You say, how, you know. So you think of, okay, you know, you see about, they tell you their jugular, or when you go and you get your shots, I don't know what this thing is.
Where they take the
and
blood.
then they talk about the risk and different things like that. And you used to hear people say, slit your wrist, slit your wrist. So in my mind frame, it was, okay, let me slit my wrist. And it was never a slit to slit. You understand? So you end up and you do your first cut and you like, oh, that's not bad. You see the blood and you're thinking, but this blood is so much better than the penetration of this adult or the arguing that, you know, with you about who you are or whose you are or who's your mom or who's your... And the constant fighting. So it just becomes this release of, right now, nothing matters. It's just blood, you know. So it eased the pain of what yesterday was and you think, okay, I could have died. But then you realize, okay, if I would have died, what did it change? They're still going to argue, fuss, fight.
Exactly. Which is amazing to be able to see that piece, because so many young people, and if we divert to suicide itself, just young people in general don't see beyond today.
No.
Very often. I mean, it's part of who they are. That's why we, you know, a lot of people say, oh, they believe they can't get hurt or they believe nothing bad will happen to them. That's why teens often do the things that teens do. There's a lack of consequence to your actions just because.
I agree.
And I know there is a psychological, this will be a question for somebody that we talk to that actually does therapy and works specifically with teens. But there's an actual reason, and it's just the way that their brains are wired, and you know, at that age, you don't really have a fear of death per se, because it's not something that's going to happen to you. It's not something that's absolute.
You know, what I'm going to say, Amy, if I'm, it's a copycat mentality, and it's a bit of fault on the adults as well, because when we say taboo topics is not just about incest, molestation, and rape. It's about everything across the board. It has to be open dialogue with the kids. You have to share with them. Talk about suicide. Talk about how and what brings on the thought and the mental breakdown of, you know, everything, so that they can know if they need the help, they can ask for the help. That was another thing in my family. You couldn't go see a therapist. I didn't get to see a therapist until I was in my 30s, going in my 40s.
That's a lot of years to carry that.
That's a lot of years of dysfunction.
Yeah.
As an adult, I was walking around here, a grown woman, but I was still stuck as that 8-year-old little girl. And not saying that the incidents only happened at 8. They carried all the way through to, just different persons, repeated actions.
I've heard, so me coming from the background that I'm coming from, which is very different. My personal experience was intimate partner violence as an adult. And I came from a very, I had incidences, like I remember being 12 and I went for a walk with my uncle and he grabbed me and kissed me. And, I don't know that I knew immediately that I didn't like it. It was wrong. It was unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And I literally, beelined it back to the house and immediately told my mom, who then told my dad, and then a conversation took place that I have no idea about. These things happen all the time. But when they happen to you, especially over and over and over again, or even if it's the same person that is consistently doing something to you and you're not able to bring it up and put an end to it, how does that transition into it happening multiple times? Because I've had several people say this to me, and we see it in intimate partner violence as well. If you're in an abusive relationship and you don't seek the help or you don't get help, there are some of us out there that have a history of it just kind of keeps happening with different people.
So I like to say, the energies you put out, you attract those energies. Pretty much, being a survivor, I can go into a grocery store, and I can go in that grocery store, and I'll get greeted by some people will automatically hi, how are you? And then when I go into the spill of who I am and what I do and this and that, and I'd be like, I am too, So once you start going into relationships, you seem to attract either the predator or you attract another survivor like yourself. So the process began to repeat itself. Now, where I had to take a hold of everything and say, look, I got to do something. I can do something. I will do something. Go for it.
It's a process.
I had to talk. I had to talk not just to someone else, but I had to convince that person in the mirror what was happening doesn't need to continue to happen. When I say it was the same, it was different people, same issue. I was looking, yearning for that fit or fix or whatever it was that was introduced. Now, with Hosanna for Youth, what we end up doing is I took that whole experience and I said, what's the best way to, one, reach those, two, to help them in the midst of it? And I said, well, first you have to get them to acknowledge that it wasn't their fault and acknowledge what happened. Then you get them to a space that they can say who did it. Not confront the person, but be able to say, because a lot of men and women who I talk to, they can't say that my dad touched me. They can't. It just brings everything back,
It triggers you. And people have heard, I'm sure, that word. Mm-hmm. That before we started recording, this is a similar conversation that we were having, and I talked about my journaling for therapy. Yeah. And I was adamantly opposed to it. And the whole reason was because by journaling how I felt and trying to figure out why I felt that way, it was bringing me back to things and feelings and scenarios that I didn't really care to relive. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about something, when you share your experience, you are, in essence, you are reliving it. Mm-hmm. And as a survivor, even the things that you're sharing with us today, and you're saying, my uncle did this, you know, you mentioned penetration, you mentioned, you know, touching. When you say those words and you talk about it, I'm hearing it and I can visualize a story, but you're living it. I'm venture to guess that because you are in the place where you are now and you have talked about it. And I always say, like, there's a difference between survivor status and victim status. When you can share and talk and speak because you have found peace within yourself, it doesn't mean that everything is perfect all the time.
Right.
That's important to touch on, and we'll delve into that more. But it does mean that you can talk about it without going there and living there and taking root and moving back in full force.
And that's one thing I emphasize between the survivor and the victim. As a victim, I'm in the process of reliving it. I'm angry. I'm emotional about it. I'm caught up in what it felt like, what it was, and I can't move past me.
Yes.
So in a survivor state, you acknowledge who you are. You know who you are. You acknowledge what has happened to you. You got that. You forgave yourself. That's the biggest step for a survivor.
Most definitely.
It's the forgiveness part. That's when you know you're ready to walk with your head up high and say, he didn't destroy me, she didn't destroy me, and you can be in that space. So survivor now, Angine, is this person that go about and speak with other victims, their families, and everything, and help them transition from that space. Because we never think about the person being on the other side of that venture, not knowing that, you know, you're still living. Why aren't you living? Why aren't you living?
I say life can be beautiful. Life is beautiful. You have to let it.
Yeah.
But it's a process to get there. It's kind of like, it's almost a cruel thing to say sometimes, but it isn't, you know.
Embrace the process.
Yeah. It's a process. Yeah. It's a lot of healing and a lot of learning and a lot of forgiveness. You mentioned forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
And, you know, I talk in many, it's in my book, it's on my blog, it's when I give speeches, I often talk about looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person staring back at me. There was a huge disconnect between who I thought I was supposed to be or who I wanted to be, or this unknown that I craved or that I wanted to go back to, and who was actually standing there. And a lot of that was shame, guilt. I was pretty much disgusted with myself because I was like, how could I let this happen to me? And then on the flip side of that very same coin, I was saying, what did I do wrong? I obviously deserved this. What did I do to anger God? What did I do to anger my husband? I obviously did something to cause this. That I know is a symptom per se of intimate partner violence or just domestic violence in general.
Yeah.
When a loved one is gaslighting you or telling you that you don't fit some mold, that you are the cause of everything bad that's happening in the relationship. Is that the same when you're talking about child molestation, when you're talking about being abused as a child? Do you still have those, what did I do to deserve this, or it's my fault?
Yes. That's one of the key thought patterns that flows through of the unworthiness and all of that. Yes, it constantly comes to the table, regardless of the age of the victim, whether they're young or old. Everyone that I meet, that's the same journey that they go on. I think the downward spiral that you get on. One of the things I wanted to point out, Hosanna for Youth, when we meet with persons, we call it heart to heart. When we sit down and we have a conversation with someone. So when we do a heart to heart and they open up and they begin to share. Now, when you meet someone, they don't rightfully start sharing.
No.
It's a process. So, that they have to feel comfortable feel like they can trust you, feel like they won't be judged. They have to have a platform that is allows them to present themselves, in all truth, and be okay with it. So when we have these heart-to-hearts, I tell them all the time, I said, one thing about forgetting, the mind doesn't forget. It can't erase itself.
Right.
You will always remember what happened, but how you react to it determines.
That's huge. Mm-hmm. It's huge because that, it, like you said, it never goes away.
Yes.
You said you will always have those memories. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, I'd like you to speak to this, but I know that now it's been, and I'm starting to lose track of time, which is probably a good thing. It's been about 8 years-ish, going on 9, somewhere around there, since I've been out of my marriage. Mm-hmm. And I mean, to this day, and again, those who follow my blog, they see this mm-hmm. because every time, I'm trying to sort through something, I often do it in writing. That is my medium. That's where I'm the most comfortable. That's where I personally find my way back mm-hmm. to peace or to working through whatever issue I have going on. And, it can be anything from coming to terms with my current argument in my head and my current thing that's holding me back, coming to terms with my fear of failure and where that's coming from and how that's affecting me and how that may or may not have anything to do with my marriage, and learning to deal with that head on, to being triggered by an event that I don't understand. Why am I having an anxiety? What happened that caused me to have this anxiety attack and to be mm-hmm. sick to my stomach and to be fighting, falling into the pit of depression again? What is it that happened? Those things still happen. They still come up. I am still fighting a battle per se. But on the flip side of that, I can sit here and I can tell you I'm still fighting those battles. Right. It's obviously an issue. It needs worked on. Or I can stand up in front of people and say, this is my story. Mm-hmm. This is what happened to me. Mm-hmm. These are the things he did to me. And perhaps somebody hearing me might think, oh, well, it didn't bother her that much because she can say it without mm-hmm. blinking an eye. Mm-hmm. Well, I can say it without blinking an eye because I've said it so many times that now I have come to a better place where it doesn't have the hold on me it once did. Mm-hmm. But do you find, when you say it doesn't leave you, you still have those memories and having to deal with them, do you find yourself still working through issues, or do you find yourself currently, have you found that over time that those issues have become further and further apart, or that, how do you deal with what goes on?
Okay. So
it's a better question. That's a better question. Let's just leave it there. How do you deal with what goes on up here?
Therapy. Constant therapy. My therapist and I have an open relationship. And that means that when it does become too much, it does sometimes, because every time I hear someone else's story, it opens mine back up, no matter what space I'm in. You understand? So on a good day, having a heart-to-heart with a complete stranger that I just met and they're ready to open up about what they've been through, I'm reliving mine again. So I say to people all the time, I relive my sexual encounter with my cousin over and over again. But they say, well, how do you stay in a good space? Because looking at you, you're smiling, you this and you're that. And I said, I go to therapy a lot. Not because I am broken or, I can't handle it or anything like that. That's just what I know balance me. I need someone to talk to.
Right.
Just as well as you all need someone to talk to. But say if I can't make it to the therapist, I found my happy place, is what I call it. And my happy place is sitting by a lake and just taking in nature. If you follow me on Facebook and social media, you'll see that I'm always putting up pictures of nature. That's because I'm trying to bring myself from where I was to connect until I can get to see her. Yeah.
It's that, again, I'm smiling. I laugh. One day we're going to have a studio and we're going to have a camera and everybody's going to see how absolutely crazy I look when I'm talking to people. It's like, yes, we're talking about this horrible thing and you're telling me how hurt you are and I'm grinning from ear to ear. It's because I can, again, when you're speaking, I can relate. Mm-hmm. I do it differently. Mm-hmm. But, I know sometimes I battle with myself and I say I'm a hypocrite. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm like, because I'm telling all you people, if you're on my author site, if you're on the Forget Me Not advocacy group site, it's irrelevant. If you are on social media, same thing, or you're following my blog, you're going to see me post these inspirational minor quotes because I love words, right? So yours is nature. And I will post these, you're not alone. You're not going through this alone. Forgiveness is all about forgiving yourself, blah, 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 all these inspirational memes. I can, it's funny, I've seen other people say, just because I share something doesn't mean that I'm going through it. Oh, really now? Yeah. Okay, I don't know if I believe you because I can tell you I will own up to it. Right. If I'm sharing that information, it's probably because it's touching me. It's probably because I'm searching for it. Maybe because I need to be uplifted and reminded and reminded and reminded and reminded constantly. And we do find through therapy or through trial and error those things that help us to, like you said, your happy place. You find what works for you. And everybody's, what works for them is different, and it goes back to the thing again. It's a process.
It's a process.
And it's an ongoing process. So why do you do it?
So when I look back over my own life, I'm 47, and one of the biggest things that stood out to me in my journey, and when I say journey, is when I decided to take over my life. And in my journey, I realized that nobody asked.
Yes.
Why didn't I matter? And if I would have stayed in that spot, who would I have been? You know what I'm saying? So then I realized it's not the people that embrace me, that's around me all the time, that help me get out of that space. It's the ones that didn't know me that helped me get out. Because why I'm saying that is, when I would meet, say, a stranger, and they automatically connect with me, they were like, I can't believe you went through all of that. I just can't see that for you. What is it you want to be? Here I am, an African-American young lady. I dropped out of high school. Someone encouraged me to go back. I couldn't go back to school with my peers because I was pregnant at the time. So I had to go to another school with just pregnant girls. And I'm like, I just keep messing up. It seemed like one foot.
It's like a domino effect.
I was just
in your mind.
Yeah, it was just nothing. But every so often, it would be this angel person that appeared from nowhere that I couldn't even tell you who they are, that encouraged me. And I'll look back and I go, why did they do that? Who are they? Why me? And then why not me? You know what I'm saying? Why not?
The question we forget to ask as survivors. You forget that question.
Why not?
Yeah.
So if I would have went through what I went through and stayed stuck, then I would have just been another statistic or, just one of the persons that things, took over them. They got stuck in that whole front and just stayed there. But then with the encouragement of others, it made me realize that I can, I will, I am. And so I decided to live in that space. And I said, you know what, I'm going to embrace this because, I should have been probably dead. Suicide attempts, I could have died. Teen pregnancy, I could have been stuck on welfare and doing all, I could have. drop out of high school. No, I went to college, with my kid. I took a newborn baby and we were there.
Good for you.
So I fought. But that's the part everybody forget. It takes work. You got to do something. Even though I met strangers that encouraged me, I had the willpower to fight because I knew if I stayed in the space that incident or those incidents kept me, I wasn't going to be anything. I was going to be destined to fail.
Was there a moment, and I bring this up again out of experience, was there a moment where you said, I'm going to fight this?
So, several, but this one I'll give you.
Well, there's usually an introductory moment, and then you need lots of reminders along the way. That introductory moment.
I think for me, I'm gonna tell you. So I gave you the brief that my dad died, and I gave you before that my mom and him used to fight all the time. And when I was young, she used to always say, "You look just like those people," and I never understood that. And she was abusive because I looked like those people. She would beat me and everything.
Who were those people?
Listen.
Okay. I thought I missed something.
So I couldn't get it. I was like, this, it just went into that whole, just feeling unworthy. So by the time I get to elementary school, and she had beat me, and when that took place, I'm like, at school, my back is all webbed up, and the principal is in the hallway saying, get to class, and she touched me on my back, and I snatched away. And she goes, what are you snatching away for? Get to the office. She came in, I was crying, and she goes, well, what's wrong? And I said, lift my shirt. She lifted my shirt, and she saw all the webs and everything. Immediately, DCF, everybody, police at the school, and they take me, and they give me to my dad. My dad raised me from 8 on, all through. But not until 2 years ago, I hired a young lady to work for my company, and she came in and she said to me, we were actually on a job. We were on a cleaning job, and we were having a conversation about our upbringing and things we've been through, just passing time. And she goes, oh my goodness, Angine, you don't know. I go, know what? Well, your dad wasn't your dad. I go, oh, I knew that. I couldn't give it to her. I just said, I was like, oh, I knew that. And she goes, oh. So you know the rest of the story? I go, no. No, I don't. And I don't care to know. But I knew the story. I knew it because you people my mom was raped when she had me. And I was a constant reminder.
So it wasn't a reminder of your dad the way you maybe perceived it.
I perceived it as my dad.
Your father, the man who acted as your father.
That she was like, oh, you're daddy's girl. And, I'm thinking that as that young age. But what it was she was raped. And when that came
you were a reminder of her trauma.
I was a reminder of her trauma.
That's a heavy burden to bear as a
Constantly.
child. That's a heavy burden to bear as an adult.
Yes. So that 2 years ago, when that young lady, told me all this, I have a aunt that's 70. She's like 76. She's a trip. She gives me the shoebox. I found the shoebox of letters that your mom wrote to your dad. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I read the letters, and there it is, just as you can see it played out. And I'm like, wow. So my passion for something is something I actually was born in. My journey in that path was because it was there, So not having the mother, she's deceased as well, And my father. So not having that relationship due to their own personal traumas created this little river that I could have continued to sail on or jump off the ship. And I decided to jump off because it's more nicer on the side.
Right.
As a survivor. And I said, you know what? I don't want anybody else that have a privilege to wake up every day to this place, this world, this beauty, and be caught up in what their parents went through, or to be caught up in what river they got to sail down, and nobody ever asked them what's wrong. So all the way up to 45 years old, I was stuck. Like, even though I had started the therapy and all of that,
right.
but I was still stuck in this whole thing of trying to figure out how this is going to play out. Who is Angine going to become and everything like that, until one day I decided to look in the mirror. And really, that's one of my speaking engagements. So when you were talking, I'm like, oh, Lord. But it was Mirror Me. That's, when I decided to look in the mirror and really pay attention to this beautiful woman that's there. I cut off all my hair because I didn't want any. I would stay in the salon hours to look all pretty and the makeup and stuff. And I cut off all my hair, not because I'm not sickly. It's nothing. And I just didn't want you to see the made up part of me. I wanted you to meet me. After going through that at 45 and hearing everything that you thought as a kid come together and it makes sense to you now, I said, oh, I wonder if I wasn't, the hair, if I wasn't the makeup, if I wasn't the pizzazz, what would they see? Would they keep reminding themselves that I was this teenager that went through all this stuff, or would they remind themselves that I was this girl at a young age that was, given away by her mom to her dad and all this, the stories, all those stories matter. And I cut my hair and my grandson said, you look just like me. I said, okay.
That's so awesome.
I said, I can do this. 2 days later, I had a speaking engagement. I walked out on stage and people said, you are gorgeous. And I went right home. I stood in front of the mirror and I looked. I go, they don't see the teen pregnancy. They don't see the dropout. They don't see the drugs. They don't see this. They don't see that. They don't see any of that. They see just me. So I'm going to keep my hair short.
Hey, whatever works.
I decided that. But I want to be that person to give back to all of those who don't have a voice. And it's not just young people. I've met from the elderly that they had to carry all of that. And they still holding on to all of that. I did a piece about who's sitting at your table around Thanksgiving. How many people have to steady sit with their predators? Live with their predators?
That's something people don't think about, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I shouldn't even say it that way, because I have a kind of a different take. I don't really think that people don't think about it. I think that society ignores it.
Ignores it.
And I say that it's going to sound judgmental, and in some ways there's probably a hint of judgment to it, but not in the way that people would think. It's mostly because it saddens me. Mm-hmm. It saddens me that as a society, we are so uncomfortable with certain topics and so uncomfortable with things that are happening under our own roof, to our best friends, mm-hmm. to our children, to people in our workplace.
Church.
In our church. We've had a few conversations about that as well. Mm-hmm. We are so uncomfortable with what is going on around us that it is easier as humans, mm-hmm. and it's easier to ignore it than to face it head on, because facing it head on, that sucks. Mm-hmm. Facing it head on is not, again, it's not an easy road. Mm-hmm.
as somebody that is, a victim, as somebody that is in that place where they are bitter, depressed, angry, feeling that they're worthless, no matter what the circumstances that brought them to that point, it's difficult to say, I'm going to be different. I'm going to change my perception. I'm going to get the help that I need. Because it's scary.
It's scary.
We don't like necessarily where we are, but the thought of completely changing that and being somebody that we, at that point in time, as a victim, don't understand or cannot comprehend, that's scary.
It is. And I'm going to tell you, one of the pieces that I did is I never met a superhero.
Gee, really?
No.
Shoot, I was hoping you could introduce me to some.
Right. But, when I'm talking to the kids and things, that's one of the things I tell them all the time. I never met a superhero. It was no female in my community that I felt that I can sit down and have a conversation with that can shed some light on some of the torment I was going through. No one will be transparent and no one will be honest.
Did you notice, and this is something I mentioned, I did a TEDx talk. And one of the things that I said, and again, it's funny because when I write, things come out of my brain that I don't think to say otherwise. Mm-hmm. But I said, as somebody that was going through abuse and as somebody that had come out of it, in one piece per se, physically anyway, I specifically remember thinking, nobody understands me. Mm-hmm. And I thought about, why do I think that nobody understands me? Well, because society tells me and told me that nobody understood me. Mm-hmm. And that takes on a whole nother, there's a myriad of reasons that I make that statement. But you said, what you just said touches on that. That there was nobody there that you felt you could talk to. No. There was nobody there that would understand you. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't perhaps, shame you or judge you. Judge you would probably be a better word for that. In your mind. Exactly. And even if that person was there, they weren't visible.
Right. And to this day, I have, victims come in different ways. Like, not all victims are depressed and, whatever. I've met some that are, over-the-top scholars. That's where they hide their emotions at and what they're going through. They are the fun one in the bunch. They, are that Miss Personality or Mr. Personality. It has no look, Go ahead.
Expand on that, though.
Yeah.
Because that statement is 100% accurate, but I don't want it to be misunderstood by those hearing it.
Yeah. So, when I look back on my own stuff, I like to use myself as, even though I have many stories, many persons that I can fill in the blanks with, but, back then they said that, they made it that those persons that go through these things look like this, and this is who you are, and it became that, you look for the children that dressed in all black or covered up with all the jackets or, long sleeve or depressed or in the corner or whatever. And, that used to be the sign that you can kind of look for, per se, if someone was going through something. Today, it's different. Mm-mm. It doesn't have a look. Exactly. And it's a hard one because today's youth and what they're going through, it triggers a whole lot of other stuff that's to the forefront than what was back then when I was. So now one of the stages when they're going through the sexual identity. Back then, we probably went through it, but we didn't know what it was, right. And it wasn't something right. But right now, if you look, sexual identity is so profound that you have these children that have been sexually molested or in some sense incest, molestation, or, rape perhaps, that they now are questioning their gender. They don't know. And it's not an easy topic that anybody's sharing. So now they're venturing thinking, this is the feeling that I'm familiar with. So this is what I identify with. but you don't know what you didn't experience any other feelings. So you don't know if you would identify with that either. But now it feels comfortable more for you to be over on this side because that's all you knew.
Right.
So, for instance, a young man that I had the privilege of having a heart-to-heart, his mom, her cousin, Mel, got out of jail. She allowed him to stay at the house. And there you are. Mm-hmm. He's babysitting. And he would do things to this little boy and clean him up before the mom comes. And that was their secret, their game they played. And it went on and on and on. So now, by the time the boy is in his 13s, 14s, in middle school, getting ready to go to high school, he's, exhibiting behaviors that the mom is like, oh my God, my son, oh, blah, blah, blah. But she never questioned all back then. And so he's like, this is who I am. And she's like, what do you mean this is who you, that's not who you were when, no, what happened? Is something wrong? So she's asking in the aspect of what most parents do.
Right.
When they have to deal with the identity, but they don't deal with what the problem was when it
what could have led to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's, and I had a thought and it was gone.
So
keep going.
So one of the things now, and with today's youth, that's one that is different than when we were, we didn't. I'm saying we
wasn't discussed.
No, it wasn't discussed.
Yeah.
It wasn't as open now. But now we're not talking about these kids' bodies. I mean, when I was young, no one told me about your breast, the proper that you're going to get your cycle, this, that. And, no, when you got your cycle, you were shunned for having a cycle.
So that's something that I didn't experience, but that just adds. I can't even imagine the layer of confusion that adds, especially when you're already in a position that is not natural,
right,
not okay,
right,
not acceptable, and now the things that are natural and are okay and are acceptable are also an issue, or you're not addressing things for what they are.
Right.
I remember what I was going to say. You were talking about, we have, I like to call them hot topics opposed to taboo topics.
Okay.
We have hot topics. We have things now, and I will be the first to say, that have had to be fought for. Mm-hmm. We had, society and the LGBT community in particular fought to be able to be who they are in our community without, being shunned, being put down, being, told that they had to fit a certain mold. But with that being said, it's a little more. I don't really want to say it's a hot topic because it's still one of those ones that, depending on where you are, and it still is, shrouded in, shame, mystery, things that we don't necessarily feel comfortable with 100% as a community. But it's come a long ways. But we have topics that are, hot topics. Bullying. Yeah, I'm all about talking to kids about bullying because especially somebody, I don't care if we're talking about your experience or my experiencing, that is all bullying. It's just coming from somebody other than a peer. It's coming from a family member. It's coming from a loved one. It's still bullying.
Right.
So I'm all about bullying. The problem that I have is that we don't expand that. And I know there are so many things that can't fit into a school. There are so many things. I taught, as I mentioned earlier, for over 10 years. Mm-hmm. Again, I'll be the first one to sit back and say, you know what? It's not the teacher's job to take care of all of this stuff in the school. Teacher's job is to teach your kids how to function educationally, blah, blah, blah. But with that being said, again, we as a society are okay with certain topics. We're okay with talking about bullying, or we're okay with talking, I can't even think of another one off the top of my head. There are certain things that we're okay talking about, and we beat to death. Mm-hmm. Like,
That's all we talk about. That's what the posters are about. That's what the PSAs are about. That's what the assemblies are about. That's what we will talk about in the house, because it's not a personal matter. Mm-hmm. It's a sticking up for your kid, quote unquote, matter. Right. But there are so many other things that surround that. Like you say, if we're talking about self-esteem, self-image, molestation, healthy versus unhealthy touches, acceptable versus unacceptable touches, teen dating violence, rape, the list goes on and on and on and on. And the reality is that none of those are standalone topics.
Nope, they go hand in hand.
They all go hand in hand. Bullying is not a standalone topic. Nope. If you really start to dissect it, the reality is that the same things that we could be teaching our kids about bullying, which is not,
One of the things that I have a problem with, and all of it does go hand in hand, and you hit on a very hot topic that needs to stay at the forefront, is the LGBT community with the gender identification, and getting the community to understand more so, and to understand what's happening, what it's about, so they can see that if it's as transparent as it is, meaning to not say, I'm not saying they have to accept, but let's talk about it. Let's not peek around the corner anymore. Let's not talk about the neighbors across the street by peeking out the blinds. Go over, knock on the door. Let's have a conversation. Hi, who are you? Are you Sue and Sue, or, whoever? And make it that we're able to have these type of conversations with you, instead of being looked at like strangely because I'm in your community, or, that's in your community. One of the things that I realize is a huge component that's missing is parenting. That's the core of all of this stuff.
And I want to add to that, and then I want you to continue. You said parenting, and a lot of people I know right off the bat are going to say, "Oh, but I'm a good parent."
Yeah.
And I'm married, or my husband and I are separated. Or I just automatically, as a female, say that. But we're separated, but we co-parent. We're a good team. We educate our children. We send them to a good. You're going to have that. Mm-hmm. That parenting issue that gets kicked down the street to that other family, that single mom that's never home, that drunk father. Yeah. And so
I would expound on that. Parenting 101 is what I call it. Parenting. Just because we're able to reproduce doesn't make you a good parent. Just because you have two persons that's going to a 9 to 5, that doesn't make them a good parent. Just because your kids are not hungry at night and they have the best clothes and all that stuff doesn't make you a great parent. When you're able to lead someone beyond your own esteem issues, mentally, in a space that they can be great and know who they are, and that's kind of the mold of creating a good parent, because you're bringing up a human being that has some value to sense of who they are. Not doing what you say makes them, your students or your whatever. Because, no, seriously, my mother, even, in the early part of my years, she governed us with fear. I'm your mother, you do as I say. And it was, oh, don't touch that, I said. And if we go over to such and such house and I say that, you was just petrified. Like, if you don't do what she says, she's going to kill you or something. Right. Really, like you thought.
Child imagination going, yeah, exactly.
But, I would have gained so much more if you would have told me, hey, Angine, if you do this with your skin every night, it will, you wouldn't have fewer wrinkles and everything like that. If you do this, it'll make your day more pleasant, and you'll, just be a little friendly to people, and be aware of this and know this and all these other things that make a good person. aware and alert of their surroundings and things like that would have made much sense. I'm a parent. And I'm on the record, I consider myself to be a horrible parent.
No!
Because I am that single mother that works a lot of hours and, preparing meals way before going out to restaurants to get them. Do I think I gave my kid 100% of me? I would say yes. But when I defined to you just now earlier in our interview who I was, what could I have given them? Realistically,
the thing is that you're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
And it's about educating yourself.
Yeah.
So we can only do with what we have.
Yeah.
At that moment in time. That's all. I mean, that's all anyone can do.
Yeah.
But that right there is not an excuse at the same time.
No.
So like you said, you can be like, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't have the money for this. I don't have the time for this. I don't have the energy for this. Mm-hmm. I have my own issues. I'm playing devil's advocate. Right?
Yeah.
I have my own issues to deal with. Look, I have a sick parent, and my job is demanding, and da da da. I don't have time to worry about the people across the street.
Right.
Well, maybe you don't. But a smidgen of educating yourself, 30 seconds.
But then you run
discussing.
You run into people that say, why bother?
Yeah.
Why bother? So with that mentality and with those that you may encounter, I encounter them all the time, especially on the platform I'm on, incest, molestation, and rape. Why talk about it? I'm old now. It's not going to help anything.
Yeah.
Or, why say anything? They're not going to believe me anyway. Or why bother? My mom doesn't care. She's still with him. She's still married to him. Why bother? So you can stay in that space. I mean,
I think we're talking about two different things, but that is, that's, and I can personally relate to both, as I'm sure you probably can as well. I went through that phase. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm not going to that safe walk like women in distress were doing. People were like, oh, you should go to this. Yeah, no, I'm not going to that.
Oh, wow.
Because why am I going to go and remember all these terrible things that happened to me? Like, life's good now. I'm out. I'm gone. I'm whatever. I found out, I learned the hard way that no, life isn't good now, and it's not whatever, because you can't ignore the things that happen to you and expect them just to go away. That's why you bother,
right?
Because they affect you if you realize it
or
not.
Reason I say parenting 101 is the core, because you have a broken person that becomes a parent. Okay. That broken person now has to be more than who they were for that little bitty person that's there. They're not going to be able to be if they can't realize that they have their own. So parenting 101, we don't get a script on what's required to be a parent. Only thing we get is what we saw our parents do.
Yeah.
So as these past 2 years on this journey I've been on, I had to realize my mother only did as much as she knew from what her mother taught her. Do I have the right to keep holding her at fault for the things that she did? No. She did the best she could with what she had. Now, when I would say I'm not a good parent, to society, you have to have a 2-parent home. You have to have 2 working incomes. You have to have all this stuff in order to be deemed a good parent. Okay? I've seen some amazing single parents. Men
Definitely.
raising their children as well as women. And I have to top off the grandparents in the foster.
Yeah.
Because they play a huge role in the lives of many too. So when I say that parenting 101, if it's a model of a perfect parent, then share it.
I don't think that there is.
It's none. I know. I'm being sarcastic.
Right, no. And that's the truth. It's like if somebody has it, by all means, let us know what that is. And I bet you between the two of us, we could poke holes in it. Because the reality is nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
We all have our things that we need to work through.
Yeah.
But,
I think the point that I just keep wanting to drive home with these is, I'm talking to people like you that are sharing, this is what I went through. This is how I came out of it. This is what I'm doing with what I've learned. And, personally, like kind of my personal mission in all of this is that take a second, listen to the podcast, learn something from it, apply it to your life. And when I say apply, I'm not necessarily saying that, people need to, jump on whatever bandwagon. You don't need to go be, super volunteer for, for any organization. You don't need to be out there sharing your story with everyone because perhaps that's not where you want to be. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. But do something with it in the fact that, just educate yourself. Learn from what's being shared. If you see that PSA announcement, watch it. Internalize it a little bit. If you come across an article on the bus or, whatever, at your lunch break, read it. Don't skim past it in your feed because it says domestic violence or molestation or rape. Read it. Learn what victim blaming is. Just educate yourself. And the more that you learn and the more open you are to having conversations with people that have short stories to tell, or the more open you are to spending time around people that perhaps you wouldn't have been open to in the past, whatever the case may be, the more you will learn. And the more you learn, the more equipped you are going to be to create a better society for those who do need a voice. And for those who do need to be heard, for those who do need somebody to say, what's going on? Is everything okay? And that's a world of difference, to somebody that's reaching out.
Exactly. A lot of times, people say where they're comfortable. So they think that being quiet and, just internalizing it all is fine. But they very seldom realize that they're not living. And they become stuck. And when organizations such as Forget Me Not or Hosanna for Youth or others that we encounter come about, and their platform is one that's standing and saying, hey, we're here, we can help. It gives that persona that you're not alone and that it's okay. And that we're here, we support. So when I encounter for myself, the ones that come to me and they go, well, we shouldn't be talking about this. It's hard for me to deal with. My family is going to be upset, whatever that is. They have a tendency to say, well, I won't be in contact with you anymore or whatever. It's okay, fine. Not everybody will get it. And I'm okay with that. But what has been happening is the ones that need it, I reach. And that's the same with, I know you probably have the same thing. You're like, okay, I can't harp on those that have to walk away. On my social media, in my inbox, I get it. It's like, you talk about this too much.
Wow.
That didn't happen in my family. We wasn't that type of family. I'm like, what type of family is it?
It's irrelevant. Yeah.
So people have their own perceptions.
That's what comes back to that education piece. It doesn't all look the same. We talk about that with intimate partner violence all the time. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what kind of house you live in, what kind of family you came from. It spans all.
And with the education, education is just as, put it inside the churches. Make it as easy to access. Information. It should be a bulletin board type of takeaway that children in the community at the parks should be able to take these little pamphlets, and take it with them to know what's going on or whatever, because they may not be getting the education about certain things in their home.
Not getting it elsewhere.
Yeah. Finding the places in our community that has a great impact on these kids and where they are, and making sure it has that information there. A lot of, when I was younger, the community events were the thing of our time, where everybody would come out to parks and they had these community events. You'll see thousands and thousands of people. And there you are. Organizations like mine and yours need to be out there at these events saying,
here's the information.
Keep it. Put it somewhere. These young ladies right now with the trafficking and things of those natures, esteem is a big issue. Why would I feel that this guy outside of my family can give me all this nice stuff, and I go off with him, and here I am doing all these things for other men or women to live or to have stuff. Social media. Our kids and social media.
We've talked about just how much the internet has... It's a wonderful tool in that it brings us information. You can get information from all corners of the world, and you can learn so much. And from a standpoint such as ours, where we're trying to get information out, it gives you a platform to reach people that you would never reach otherwise. I'm always impressed by who's reading my blog. I don't know who they are, but I can see what country they come from, and it's all over the world. You see people from all over the world that are reading what you're sharing. Would have never been able to do that even, 25 years ago.
Exactly.
That would not have happened. It would have been very, specific to the geographical area that I'm in. But you find that you're reaching out to people and you're reaching the right people. Because like you said, the ones that need to hear are the ones that are going to hear. But on the flip side of that,
just as
it's
much.
Opening up the world to predators.
Right. Well, on my side with the incest, molestation, and rape, and the family-friendly predators and everything, just as well, they're trying to perfect their actions.
Their
in
skills,
a sense.
their skill set.
Skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just as well as we're on there to educate ourselves about things, they're on there to educate themselves too. And it's a great hiding space for them.
Yes.
The land of make-believe. You can do some of everything, but the part of it is the education part of caution needs to be put out for our youth and everything. The internet is what it is, but still you have some that are being misled by the internet as well. So now you have these predators hiding behind a screen, a monitor, a keyboard, and they are reaching our kids.
Video games.
Rapidly.
We talked about that as well.
Yeah.
I think it's another awesome thing to be able to get on and play video games with people from around the world and literally compete against real people instead of the computer. But the reality is, again, if your children are on that, they're having conversations, or assuming that that's something that they're actually doing, but they're having conversations with people. They can be offline chatting with people.
Yeah.
It's awareness. It's knowing what your child is doing. It's what they have access to. It's educating them.
I met a young lady, and I'm using her son again. This is a different one, but he had been on social media and communicating and thinking he was communicating with a teen person, and it was an adult male that had him meet him somewhere. He raped him. Yeah, he raped him.
And he's thinking he's meeting a buddy.
He's meeting, not necessarily a buddy. I think he was thinking he was meeting someone his age.
That's
but
what I mean.
Into
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He thinks I'm meeting another teenager, another person
And it was
my age with a similar interest, a new friend.
Female. She goes to social media and thinking she's going on her modeling gig. Everybody wants this instant fame. They're going to get discovered.
Heard several stories about that. Man, that sadly,
she gets raped
or trafficked.
Yeah, but this one got raped.
Oh, you're specifically talking about someone in particular. Yes.
Yeah. Because
I've heard the other stories from people that work in the trafficking world where it's similar. That similar hook.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you famous. I'm going to, you're beautiful, whatever, And
why we're not telling our kids they're beautiful? Parenting 101.
It gets lost in the conversation, sadly.
Why are we not making them feel beautiful?
Or even if we are talking about, again, realistic. I work with a girl, and she's 12.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently, there was a whole, I don't know all the logistics of it, but I think it was up in Palm Beach somewhere. Mm-hmm. There was an Uber driver that raped like a 13-year-old girl. And literally, I often, after tutoring, would put her in an Uber and send her home. She was gone a couple miles. She always got in the back seat. It never really crossed my mind. I was a little uncomfortable with the idea at first just because I was like, I don't know, but then I'm like, you know what? When I was 12 years old, I used to babysit people's kids, So, it's like, okay, maybe, Amy, you just need to, put this into perspective. Then I hear this story. And I sat down with her before she gets in the Uber, and I'm like, look, I don't want to scare you. I'm like, but I think we need to have a talk. Let's just talk about safety. I said, because you know what? I'm a female, and you're a female, and I want you to know that you have an out should you ever feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I said, so you have my phone number. I said, when you get in an Uber or a taxi, and I kind of walked her through this whole situation, which I have no idea it was 100% accurate advice, but I was telling her, make sure you know where the locks are. Mm-hmm. Make sure that you can get out if somebody locks you in. Mm-hmm. If anybody ever even so much as looks at you and you are uncomfortable with it, tell them to stop the car and let you out, and you immediately call me or call your dad, And I'm walking her through this process, and I thought, there was a piece of me, I'm not a parent, I've worked with a lot of kids, but there was a piece of me that was uncomfortable because I didn't want to scare her. Mm-hmm. I don't want her to be terrified of the world. But then on the flip side, I'm thinking, but this is information she needs to know because you know what? She lives in South Florida, and there are lots of people, and she's getting in a car with a stranger, and she should know that, if you're ever uncomfortable, you can demand that you be allowed to leave. Mm-hmm. And if you're not, you fight with everything that you have.
Right.
And that's okay. Just because this guy's an adult or whatever doesn't make it okay.
Right.
And I think those are the conversations that are missing.
It is.
And it's not, I'm not speaking to her parents because I don't know if, they had this conversation or not. I told them, yo, FYI, I had a heart-to-heart with your kid, and they were great with it. But, I think we don't think to have these conversations as adults, as parents, as teachers. And it's not judgmental. It's not because people don't care. Mm-hmm. It's just often they're unaware. Or they don't, or it's not comfortable, or they don't want to scare their kids, or they don't want to believe that it could happen, or do you see a different...
I think it's more so, it's not age requirement type of issue conversation. They categorize what is suitable for children.
This is what you talk about at this age.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be.
No, agreed.
No, it shouldn't be. I think it should be, let's put it out there. Not saying that you give all intimate details.
Right.
But you make it clear so you can prepare. Say, for instance, if my mother and my father, they fought a lot. So if my mother said, okay, you know, I'm feeling this kind of way, me and your dad, he's beating me, or not saying in the direct involvement of the incidents, but letting us know what she was going through, more so instead of trying to hide it, and preparing us, then we would know how to look for that in a person, or to be aware if it was going to, you know, if we felt it was going to be something that this person is trying to bring upon us, you know, as far as the abuse in that manner. We could kind of already have a realistic idea about it. It won't be something that someone said, someone told us, or whatever. My mom was honest and she, you know, shared. If it was something she shared pertaining to, she was walking from the store, she wasn't alert to where she was going, and this man jumped out, and it would have prepared us than to make us afraid.
Right.
Because on the other hand, you got someone else saying, oh, you know, it's a man down on that side of the road and he's scary, and we like, ooh, but it's unrealistic.
Right. It's a matter of empowerment almost. It's, you know, just teaching your kids to be empowered and to know where are the boundaries, and setting up your boundaries, and being aware of what's around you, and not to be scared.
Like
which is crazy.
My 17-year-old, I mean, he just graduated yesterday, and
that he's happy.
In the community, you know, like he's in the community we live in. He's been robbed twice walking to school, gunpoint.
Oh, yeah. You shouldn't experience that as a high schooler.
I say, you know, when it first happened, he was scared. He was just crying, and he ran, and you know, all of this, and he's like, I'm so scared. They had a gun, and he, you know, he's giving me this, and I said, okay, where were you? We went back, and this and that and that, and I said, so what did I explain to you when walking home from school to walk in a group, right? Yeah, you said that, but I didn't want to walk with them, and I wanted to walk. Okay. So you walk by yourself.
Consequence to actions.
Mm-hmm. So you walk by yourself, and were you alert to your surroundings? What were you doing when you walked? And tell me what you were doing. No, I was on the phone talking with my friend. I say, so how old was you? So he shows me he's on the phone, and he's walking down the street. So you just in this conversation, you're not paying attention. Like you said, consequences to your actions. And that's what we need to share in a realistic term, so that they know the whole story. Not the cute glamour part, but all of it.
You can't sugarcoat things. Even with kids, they're much more open to reality than one would think. And like you said, you don't have to get into the nitty-gritty specifics.
Mm-hmm.
I had another man that I talked to, and he expressed, he was like, he says, you know, my 8-year-old, he goes, he just wouldn't let it go. He had to know where babies came from. It was like, you know, he's like, he just wouldn't let it go. He says, and I'm like, I'm not ready to have this conversation with him. He's 8. He goes, but he just couldn't let it. He couldn't, you know, it was like, and he said, finally, I was just like, okay, fine. You know, he says, I gave him the bare minimum basics. Ew, that's disgusting. He goes, end of conversation. He goes, but you know what? It started the conversation. Mm-hmm. He says he wanted to know if we don't express and share with our kids, and when I say our kids, now see, again, I'm not a parent, so they're all my kids. It doesn't matter if I tutor them, if they live on my street. I treat them all, you know, I probably overstep my boundaries sometimes in what, you know, advice or how I interact. But the reality is, if we don't share reality, they're going to get a reality from elsewhere, right? They're going to get it from their friends. They're going to get it from the internet. They're going to get it from TV. And that may or may not be the reality that we want to instill in them. So just from that standpoint alone, let alone you're talking about safety or comfort, right there is a great reason to be
having those difficult conversations.
You gotta be transparent and give them the full, a lot of the teens that I meet. I did a event with a local park that I was doing these forums, and it was all boys, about 25, once a month. Okay, so they knew. The first day I walked in, I put on my heels, I had on my dress. I wanted to give an impression. So when I walked in, you got, So I had their attention, and I stood to the front of the room, and they're looking, and one boy, he was like, "What is your name?" And I didn't answer purposely. And I started it off with one platform. I need to see a show of hands of who all is sexually active in here. It was a room from 8 years old all the way up to 17.
Oh, wow, that's a span.
And I had 25 boys. When I asked, I need to know who all is sexually active in this room. Would you believe every hand was up? Every.
That's scary.
No,
it's scary.
It's reality, though.
But that's
it's scary, but yeah.
It's scary, but it's something that
many
you
times.
have to. Yeah.
They didn't know why I was there. I didn't put up my banner. I didn't put up any of my displays. I didn't do any of that stuff. This was our very first introduction because I wanted to see if this was where I needed to be. Now, over a period of time, some were sexually active because they were molested. Some of them were survivors of incest. You know what I'm saying? However, others were just in this cycle of, I became a certain age and my uncle, daddy, somebody said, you gotta have sex. And that's how they taught them.
Perhaps familiar or culturally
Taught
pushed.
them, you're a man, you gotta have sex. So in this whole 6-month period that I was there, I'm thinking to myself, what is it, I have a son, that I'm not seeing? So when I was a teenager girl, we didn't have that whole, this is your period, this is your body, this is your this, this is your that. But then as time went on, they started talking about female, birth control and different things, and they had the little sex ed classes and stuff like that, but nothing was extended more so to the boys. I'm like, okay, girls have to go to the GYN and get checked and make sure. Where do boys go?
They don't.
They don't.
They don't. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. You got 25 boys that's already sexually active. So when you take your boys to the pediatrician, are they checking them? What are they doing? What kind of care are they making sure they have? Preventive care. Not just diseases.
No, just in general. And I can almost, and again, I'm not a therapist and I don't know the answer, but I'm going to say I can almost guess that over half of those boys that raised their hand, they were not emotionally or ready to be sexually active.
No, they're not.
If not more.
No. But they don't even know what their body is and what it does and how it functions, or if they've been checked out. Some of them circumcised, some of them not. All this stuff in general self-care that they need to know that as a male, their body goes through changes, even though it doesn't produce a period, but it goes through changes, and they need to know all of this stuff. But they don't know.
But they're not educated on it at all.
Society is not educating them, but we keep having these broken things and calling it a family, trying to raise these doggone little boys. It's not working.
Talk about, and you mentioned these 3 words again, and beforehand I said I want to define them. And again, a lot of people probably know what it is. A lot of people might think they know, but what what defines the difference between these three terms?
The incest means they're related to you. Okay? Related to you by, their father, mother, blood. I'll say it.
Yeah.
Related to you by blood. Incest. Molestation, they're still related to you, but they're distant cousins, uncles, in that sense, like that. The incest is the immediate family. And once you go out of that immediate family, and they're still family, molestation is the touching and the feeling and, kind of getting into that whole part of they're your friend in a sense, and, it goes on into the...
The whole, the story, the line that they feed you.
The line that they feed you with the molestation part. And the rape by a family member or rape by a family friend. It's those ones that you verbally say no, and they overpower you. Okay. And they're related.
And when we're talking about incest and molestation, are we talking about being raped, but specifically, and I say rape because I know, again, some people will, there's these blurred lines sometimes, although there shouldn't be, but even sometimes people will say, I'll hear the word sexual assault, and I'll be like, okay, what exactly happened? Because it's a rather broad definition.
With Hosanna for you, when we say we stand on incest, molestation, and rape, it's in the family. We're specifically within the family. Sexual assault can go as in the family, and it can go broad to being outside neighbors. It can go broad to being a stranger danger.
Right.
It can go broad to all of that. But we wanted to stay in the family because that's the area that people don't normally want to talk about. But yet we have young ladies having kids from their dad, or young ladies having kids from their stepdad, or, brothers who are sleeping with the mothers. Those are all incestuous relationships, sexual relationships that's taking place. When you get into the molestation part, it's molestation kind of is like, to me, is the most disgusting one of. I think it's like that whole grooming process. It's like the molester, he constantly tries to be that perfect family member. He's welcome. It has
an additional creepiness factor to it.
Yeah,
because you don't know you don't, and not because incest doesn't have a creepiness factor,
right,
but because you do have a relationship there,
right.
Whereas molestation, it seems that's more like there's somebody trying to get an in.
Yeah,
they're befriending. They're building that relationship with the child.
Mm-hmm. And they overpower them with they groom the parents.
So they groom the parents and the child.
They groom the parents and the child. And that leaves the child with no one to defend them. Because when that child says, oh, Uncle Pete with his nice self, he comes with all this candy.
Yeah.
And Uncle Pete is this and the mother says, oh, Uncle Pete loves you.
And there's no connection there whatsoever, sadly.
Right.
Either subconsciously or consciously.
Right. So that's sort of the difference in a nutshell and how it plays out.
I'm going to ask you for different words of advice.
Okay.
So speak to the parents out there. Or anyone brought in that. Speak to the adults out there that have children in their lives.
What I tell adults all the time is pay attention to your children. Don't put them in situations that you already know the answer to. Uncle Pete been Uncle Pete when you were a child. If you know Uncle Pete is touchy, don't make your children go through that. Be honest with reality of what's taking place. And that's mostly what I tell parents all the time. Pay attention. Pay attention.
Can you expand that a little bit more to maybe the parents pay attention? What kind of things might they see their child exhibiting? Let's just say that they are really and truly unaware.
Okay.
what types of things might be like a clue for them to be more aware and to maybe start having that conversation?
Well, because times have changed or whatever, it really just starts with, being transparent in conversation, just that part in itself. Right. But some of the things that you can put your finger on is if you see like bedwetting. Bedwetting is a clue. Young ladies that's always covered up or feeling or looking like they're kind of
like close
to a certain person. That's a sign. Try to find out what it is. What's wrong? Why don't she like when John come over? And it's not always a John. It could be an Angine. It could be somebody else.
Right.
But pay attention to those things that kind of look odd to you. And if you don't think anything and you think that everything's going, then have the conversation that if this was to happen, blah, 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 you feel okay to tell me.
Talk to victims. And I know a lot of these victims are young, but you never know. We might have, a teenager that stumbles across this or an adult that is still dealing. But I'd like you to talk to like current victims and then people that are trying to work towards that survivor status.
One of the things I would say to them is you have to determine your fate and whether you want to live or not. And I'm saying live within yourself. Because long as you keep allowing this story to destroy you or to break you or to make you feel unworthy, you're letting the predator or the person that did whatever to you win. He doesn't have to win. Yeah, he may not never go to jail. The family may not never believe you.
Yeah.
But in the midst of all of it, it's you that matters. And by taking an initiative to say, look, I can't give him power anymore, you're already winning.
Right.
So that's the most I can tell a victim.
And I say that to all victims.
Mm-hmm.
You can allow your abuser to control your life, even when they're not trying to, or you can choose to take ownership of it yourself.
That's the best thing you can do. The hardest thing for this whole thing that we call life is not being educated. That's the hardest thing.
It's the truth, I mean, there's these pieces you just miss along the way or that you don't think or maybe you don't even know that they're available to you.
Yeah. And not being educated, it's so much information out there for a parent and for a victim. And I've also met the predator, So it's so much information that's there. But we have to be conscious and aware as well as educated so that we can prevent some things.
And that's it right there. If as all of these topics that we're talking about on Forget Me Not Radio, and again, we've touched on it here, we've touched on it before, they're all intertwined. Mm-hmm. And I think the main qualifier, the main thing that keeps them all tied together is it doesn't matter if we're talking about human trafficking or if we're talking about domestic abuse, or we're talking about molestation or suicide, and the list goes on and on. It's the silence attached to it. Mm-hmm. And as long as there's silence surrounding them, they thrive, because that's what they thrive in. Mm-hmm. They thrive in silence. They thrive in this cloak, that they're covered up. We're not paying attention to it. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about it. And that's what gives them power. Yeah. It's what gives abusers power. It's what gives these topics power. Yeah. When you talk about it, when you educate yourself on it, you are more aware, and that in and of itself is the most important key to prevention.
I tell people all the time, our silence allows the predator to roam.
Yeah.
And he roams from one person in the family to the next person. So we need to stop protecting the predator.
Yep.
I go, okay, you done held his name all these years from your family members. Let them know what he did to you. When you all decide to talk, guess how many of you are going to have the same story? Don't give them that power. Save the next one.
Exactly.
Be a superhero.
And that's it right there. When you actually say the name, when you actually say the story,
save the next person.
It saves people moving forward.
I showed up to work one day with I had on a superhero cape with the shirt and so.
That's awesome. I love it.
They go, Angine, what are you going through? I go, girl.
What are you going through? That's the question, right?
I'm saving the next one. So just being in that space, it makes it easier. You know, when I stand up before a room full of people and I give them all of that, and that's just a snippet of
right.
my life.
Yeah.
And I tell them, okay, this is who. Oh my goodness. Pay it forward.
When you say every time you share your story,
you're healing.
You're healing many people, because then they know that they're not alone, and that they can get from where they are to where they need to be.
Exactly.
And
that's Hosanna's. That's Hosanna for Youth mission. You know, we're going to change what family is. That's why that whole concept of what family is, that's not true.
Right.
That doesn't make me a perfect parent. It's got to change, because if we don't, then we'll have a whole nother generation of broken people trying to mimic what we're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
And it doesn't help build better people.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's, that's point on. I love that we're on the same page from completely different perspectives, but the reality is, stereotypes don't work. They don't work. Period. I mean, we joke about it, comedians talk about it, whatever, it's fine. I'm one of those people that's not easily offended. I'm like, whatever. It's just, life is life, There are some things that are funny, there are some things that are not. But if you truly live your life categorizing people into stereotypes, whether it be family, whether it be the perfect parent, whether it be a racial group, an ethnicity, if that's how you live your life, you are you're living in a box. You're living in a box, and you're not doing yourself any service. You're not doing your children any service. And you're definitely not doing society any good service. So, as we open up and explore and learn and educate, as you open your mind to other people, other people's experiences and lives and where they come from, and I keep talking to that walk a mile in her shoes thing is such an amazing, such a simple concept. But you can say walk a mile in his shoes, walk a mile in that family's shoes, and it can be for so many other reasons. But the reality is, if you're not open to understanding where people come from, then
how are you going to relate to them?
Exactly. Then, you're not relating to them. You're not helping them. Right. You're not, in my opinion, you're not being the best person that you could be,
In my community, I am often asked, why do I live in the community I live in? And it's my home, you know what I'm saying? And in order for me to, before, I'll say, I've been living there 15 years. I was about to sell my home and just be like, I'm sick of it. But when I started thinking about how can you make a difference in this place, you could be, I was existing. I was going to work, coming home, and just all that outside didn't matter. But then, my son gets robbed. I meet some amazing people, and I'm like, okay, what can I do? Let me stop having tunnel vision. Let me see what I could do. So I started going out talking to these people. I started talking to the prostitutes, the drug addicts, this one, that one. I want to know why. Why are you out here? What's going on? I was touched. You know what? And I'm like, okay, I get it.
Everybody has a story.
And it spirals back to one area. Family.
You've made... I really appreciate you sharing your story. I really appreciate you sharing your experience in reaching out, because like I said, I could go on, and I will refrain. But there's so much work to be done in just awareness and just in education and openness. But you have your organization. Tell me specifically, if somebody is seeking help. Now, you're in South Florida, but let me know how people can get in touch with you through Hosanna for Youth. How can people that now know that there is, this particular organization and you and your story, and they want to reach you, how can they reach you?
Hosanna for Youth can be reached at www.hosanna4youth.org. We have the phone number, which is 954-962-6868. If you want to email, you're welcome to do so. It's hosannacorp@gmail.com. That's CORP, Corp. We also are on every social media outlet. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, we try to stay engaged, because you never know who may need to reach us on whatever platform. So it's always someone available that will respond if it's not myself. And we have traveled outside of South Florida with our efforts. The state of Georgia, we're actually in the process of trying to put Hosanna there. And we're looking to expand as the years come by, but it doesn't mean the services are limited. We have but partners in other states that if we can't do what is needed, we'll connect you with someone who can.
Connect with somebody else. And we'll just, so the listeners know, I'll get all of this, all of these contacts in writing. Here comes the rain again. For those of you who don't know, it's been raining in South Florida for the past week. We are underwater.
Exactly.
We had a little bit of sunshine this morning. But we are going to... I'll put a recap on the webpage, and so they'll be able to find links to your website, which will then take them to your phone number and your contact and information if they can't, remember that or for some reason, want to reach out directly. Maybe one more thing. If tell me again, just leave our listeners with this one word of advice. Like, people can come to you and they can seek help, but tell the community again, if you maybe know nothing or have never come in contact with somebody that's been through this, what can they do? I mean, just a general, average, Joe citizen who wants to be better equipped to deal with this situation. How can I learn more?
Life itself gives you, some turns and twists. And every day you have to wake up and you have to prepare for what your day is going to be like, whether it's a job or whatever. And in that day, you have your ups and downs. And you never think about the person sitting next to you, what they've been through. So you sit there and you say, well, I don't know them. I'm not talking to them, or whatever the case. Offer a smile sometime. Give them a hug sometime. Ask, what is it? Is it anything you need? Show some empathy, compassion to the next person you might see. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what their night was like, And it could be hard for many to even make it to work that day. And then have to go back home to the things that they had to endure. Some parents have the hardest time because the night before they just found out their child was sexually molested. Or going through incest. But she can't leave because her husband pays all the bills. You have so many issues that people deal with on a day-to-day basis. To come into work or to school or somewhere and have to deal with a negative response, is hard. Right now, what we need a lot more of in this place we call home is love. And sometimes that's just merely saying, I see you, and I'm here for you, and I can be here for you if you need me. So educate yourself. It may not be your story, but I can tell you, you'll meet so many more Angines along the path. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So.
Words to live by. I love it. So it's the truth, you know. You hit the nail on the head. So I thank you again for spending this time with me and for letting me come to your space. You know, we're here at Angie's office and I got to meet, you know, some of the staff here and see their space. So they're doing good work and you know, those of us that we appreciate that because you're reaching people that, you know, we can't, and you're helping to educate those of us who don't fully understand or have that experience. So thank you so much. We'll have information again on the website and how you can get in contact with Hosanna for Youth, as well as Angine if you have questions or if you want to support her organization. That link will get you to where you can do all of those things. Yeah. So thank you again for coming and listening to us today, and we will bring you more exciting things to talk about in the future, but we love all these great people that are doing fantastic things, so I'm really excited. All right, take care, people. Bye-bye.
Bye.